My phone rang at 12:17 a.m., and that was the exact second my life split in two. I remember the red numbers glowing in the dark bedroom, the soft hum of Los Angeles traffic outside our window, and Orion sleeping next to me like nothing in the world could touch him. I almost didn't answer. I wish I hadn't. But I did. And a woman's calm voice said, "Hi. Is this Callista? My name is Brielle. We need to talk about your husband." In that moment, my heart didn't just break. It stopped. I sat up slowly, staring at Orion's back. He didn't move. I whispered, "What are you talking about?" The woman on the phone didn't hesitate. She said she had been with Orion for 2 years. 2 years. She said he told her he was almost divorced. That I was complicated. That he was only staying until things were settled. I felt my hands shaking so hard I had to switch the phone to speaker and hold it with both hands. I walked into the hallway so I wouldn't wake him up. I don't even know why I protected his sleep in that moment. Maybe I was still protecting my illusion. Brielle's voice was steady. Too steady. She wasn't angry. She wasn't crying. She sounded tired. She told me Orion traveled often to see her. That his investment meetings were weekends with her. That he promised they would move to another state soon and start fresh. My mind went back to all those business trips. The packed suitcases. The quick kisses on my forehead. The "I'll call you when I land." I asked her how she got my number. She said she found it in his old paperwork while looking for insurance forms. Insurance forms. That word hit me hard. Then she said something that made my knees weak. She said, "I'm pregnant, Callista." I slid down the wall and sat on the cold floor. Pregnant. I had asked Orion about having a baby just 3 months ago. He said it wasn't the right time. He said we needed to focus on selling the house first. Selling the house. Suddenly everything connected in a way that made me feel sick. I asked her for proof. I don't know how I kept my voice calm. She sent screenshots while we were still on the phone. Messages. Dates. Photos of them together. I checked the dates against our calendar in the kitchen. The same week he took me to dinner and talked about our future in Los Angeles. He was texting her about baby names. The same Friday he told me he was meeting investors. He asked her what kind of engagement ring she liked. Engagement ring. I walked into our bedroom and looked at Orion's hand. The hand that wore the ring I thought meant forever. Brielle told me something else. She said Orion asked about the same ring model at 2 different jewelry stores. She knew because she went with him to one of them. I remembered him casually asking me what style I liked, saying it was just curiosity. My stomach turned. The truth was clear now. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a one-night thing. This was a second life. A full, planned, detailed second life. With another woman. With a baby. With another state waiting for them. And I was here, in our house in Los Angeles, thinking we were building something real. Brielle and I stayed on the phone for almost an hour. We compared dates. Trips. Promises. It became obvious that Orion was building 2 futures at the same time. He told her they would leave soon. He told me we should sell the house because the market is perfect. He wasn't choosing between us. He was managing us. Like projects. Like investments. When I finally hung up, I stood at the bedroom door and watched him sleep. I saw the man I married. The man who said I was his only one. The man who kissed my hand at our wedding and promised honesty. I felt something new rise inside me. It wasn't just pain. It was clarity. This wasn't about which woman he would choose. It was about when and how his perfect double life would fall apart. And for the first time that night, I wasn't afraid. I was awake. I did not sleep that night. I lay next to Orion and listened to his breathing, slow and peaceful, like he had nothing to hide. I watched the ceiling turn from black to dark blue as the sun slowly rose over Los Angeles. Every sound felt louder. The refrigerator turning on. A car passing outside. My own heartbeat in my ears. I kept replaying Brielle's words in my head. "I'm pregnant, Callista." It didn't feel real. It felt like I was watching someone else's life from far away. But when Orion rolled over and put his arm around me in his sleep, reality hit hard. This was my life. And my husband was living 2 of them. At 6:30 a.m., his alarm went off. He stretched and smiled at me like always. "Morning beautiful," he said. I almost laughed at how normal he sounded. I studied his face, searching for guilt. For fear. For something. But he just looked calm. He kissed my forehead and asked if I wanted coffee. I nodded because I didn't trust my voice. I followed him into the kitchen and watched him move around like nothing had changed. He talked about a conference call later that week. He mentioned another trip. I felt something inside me harden. Before last night, I would have believed every word. When he left for work, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I called Brielle. We spoke for over 2 hours. This time we were not strangers. We were two women standing in the same fire. She told me Orion had promised to move with her to another state before the baby was born. He said he was almost done handling things with me. I told her he had been pushing hard to sell our house. He said it was for a better investment opportunity. Now we both understood. He wasn't investing in property. He was investing in escape. We compared more messages. Dates. Hotel bookings. Flight times. There was 1 week that made us both go quiet. On Monday, he told me he wanted to renew our vows one day. On Wednesday, he asked her what color she wanted for their future baby's room. On Friday, he visited a jewelry store with her. On Saturday, he took me to dinner and asked me about my dream vacation. It was the same week. The same smile. The same voice. 2 completely different futures. Brielle surprised me. She wasn't angry at me. She said, "He lied to both of us. We are not enemies." That sentence changed everything. I expected jealousy. I expected blame. Instead, I felt an unexpected connection. We were both victims of the same man. And there was a baby coming into this mess. I walked through our house slowly after the call ended. The walls felt different. The photos looked fake. I stopped in front of our wedding picture. Orion's hand was on my waist. He looked proud, confident. I wondered if he was already lying back then, or if he slowly became this person. Around noon, he texted me, "Miss you already." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied, "We need to talk tonight." He sent back, "Of course. Everything okay?" I typed 3 times and erased each message. Finally, I wrote, "Yes. Just important." He answered with a heart emoji. That heart felt like a joke. I wasn't thinking about revenge. Not yet. I wasn't thinking about leaving either. I was thinking about truth. I wanted to see his face when he realized the 2 women he thought were separate worlds had spoken. I wanted to watch the moment his control disappeared. But there was something else in my mind too. The baby. That child didn't ask for this. Brielle didn't deserve to be lied to. And I didn't deserve to be replaced without even knowing. Tonight, everything would change. I didn't know how. I didn't know what he would say. But I knew one thing for sure. Orion's perfect balance was about to collapse. If you are listening right now, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Tell me where you are watching from. I want to know who is here with me in this moment. Your support means more than you know. By the time Orion came home that evening, I had rehearsed the conversation in my head at least 100 times, and in every version I was calm, controlled, and unbreakable. When I heard his key turn in the lock, something inside me became very still. He walked in smiling, holding takeout from my favorite place, like he was a good husband coming home after a long day in Los Angeles traffic. "Peace offering," he joked softly. "You sounded serious today." I told him to sit down. My voice did not shake. I placed my phone on the table between us and opened the screenshots Brielle sent me. Messages. Photos. Dates. Hotel confirmations. I turned the screen toward him without saying a word. At first he looked confused, like he truly did not understand what he was seeing. Then I watched the exact moment recognition hit his face. His jaw tightened. His shoulders dropped. He leaned back in his chair, as if the air had been pushed out of him. "Where did you get this?" he asked quietly. "Her name is Brielle," I said. "She called me last night." The room felt smaller. The clock on the wall sounded louder than ever. He ran his hands through his hair and stared at the table. He did not deny it. He did not act shocked. He just looked tired, like a man who knew the performance was over. "It's not what you think," he said finally, but even he did not sound convinced. "Then tell me what I should think," I replied. He stood up and began pacing around the kitchen, talking fast now. He said he was confused. He said things between us had been distant. He said he never meant for it to go this far. I listened without interrupting. When he paused, I asked the one question that mattered most. "Is she pregnant?" He froze completely. That silence answered me before he spoke. "Yes," he said after a long moment, barely above a whisper. Hearing it from his mouth made everything solid and real. "And you told her you were divorcing me," I continued. He looked down at the floor. "I was going to tell you," he said. "When?" I asked calmly. "After we sold the house. After you moved to another state? After your baby was born." He had no answer. I told him Brielle, and I compared dates. The same week he talked to me about renewing our vows, he was asking her about baby names. The same weekend he claimed he had investment meetings, he was visiting jewelry stores with her, and asking about engagement rings. His face changed when I mentioned the ring. He knew I knew everything. "I never stopped loving you," he said suddenly, like that sentence could fix 2 years of lies. I felt something close inside me. "You don't build a second future with someone you love," I told him quietly. "You built 2 lives. That's not confusion. That's choice." For the first time since I met him, I saw real fear in Orion's eyes, not fear of losing me, but fear of losing control. And in that moment, I understood something clearly. He had been balancing 2 worlds very carefully, and now both of them were standing in front of him at the same time. Orion tried to sit back down, but he couldn't stay still. He kept walking from the kitchen to the living room and back, like movement could help him find a new story. I stayed in my chair. I wanted him to feel that difference. He was restless. I was steady. "Callista, please," he said, lowering his voice. "We can fix this." The word fix sounded strange. This was not a broken chair or a late payment. This was 2 years of lies. This was a pregnant woman in another state. This was my marriage turning into something I did not recognize. "How?" I asked calmly. "Tell me the plan. I want to hear it." He stopped walking and looked at me. For a second, I saw the man I married. Then I saw the man who lied to me for 2 years. "I'll end it with her," he said quickly. "I'll handle everything. We can go to therapy. We can start over." "And the baby?" I asked. His silence came back again. Heavy. Avoiding. "That's complicated," he said. I felt anger rise in my chest, but my voice stayed even. "No, it's not complicated. It's a child. Your child." He rubbed his face with both hands. "I didn't plan this," he said. "You planned hotel trips. You planned moving to another state. You planned selling this house," I replied. "You just didn't plan getting caught." That hit him. I saw it. He tried a different tone then. Softer. "I was scared, Callista. Things between us felt routine. I felt invisible. I almost let that hurt me. Almost. But I remembered the screenshots. The dates. The ring. If you felt invisible," I said, "you talk to your wife. You don't build a secret family." The word family stayed in the air between us. He finally sat down across from me. For the first time, he looked small. Not powerful. Not confident. Just small. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. That question surprised me. Because I had been so focused on the lies, I had not thought about my answer. What did I want? Revenge? Divorce? Silence? I took a deep breath. "I want the truth," I said. "All of it. No more managing 2 worlds. No more smart explanations. Just the truth." And for the next hour, he talked. He met Betrayal at a networking event 2 years ago. It started casual. He said he liked how easy it felt. No history. No expectations. When she asked about me, he told her we were separated but living together for financial reasons. That was the first lie. After that, it became easier. Trips were simple to hide because of his job. He said he thought he could control it. Keep both lives stable. Keep both women calm. He convinced himself he would choose eventually. He just needed more time. Time. That word again. "When did you plan to choose?" I asked. "I don't know," he admitted. That was the most honest thing he said all night. I stood up slowly. "You already chose," I told him. "Every day you lied, you chose yourself." He looked at me like he was finally realizing the weight of what he had done. But something inside me had shifted. The pain was still there, but it was no longer sharp. It was clear. Clean. I knew now that this was not about saving a marriage. It was about deciding who I would be after this. My phone buzzed on the table. A message from Betrayal. He told me he needed space tonight. "I think he's with you." I looked at Orion, then back at the message. This was no longer just a private conversation between husband and wife. This was 3 lives connected by one man's lies. I typed back, "Yes, we're talking." And for the first time, I realized something powerful. He thought he was controlling the story. But now, Betrayal and I were talking directly. And that changed everything. I looked at Orion for a long moment after sending that message to Betrayal, and something inside me felt different, stronger, like a switch had flipped, and I could finally see the full picture without fear. He noticed the change in my face and asked who I was texting, but I did not answer right away. Instead, I walked to the window and looked out at the Los Angeles lights glowing in the distance, thinking about how big this city is and how small my world had been inside this house. "She knows we're talking," I said calmly. His shoulders dropped again. He understood what that meant. No more secrets. No more separate conversations. No more controlling the narrative. He tried to speak, but I raised my hand gently to stop him. You don't get to guide this anymore, I said. For 2 years you decided what we knew. Now we decide. That word "we" was intentional. He heard it. His eyes narrowed slightly. You've been talking to her a lot? He asked carefully. Enough, I replied. I told him Betrayal was not angry at me. That she was tired of lies just like I was. That she deserved honesty, especially now. When I said the word baby, he looked away again. I could see the pressure building on him, not emotional pressure, but logistical pressure. His 2 timelines were crashing into each other. He asked me what I was planning. I told him the truth. I was not planning revenge. I was planning clarity. I wanted transparency. I wanted him to tell Betrayal the exact same story he was telling me, with no edits. I wanted him to explain to both of us, together, what his real plan was. The idea made him uncomfortable immediately. That's not necessary, he said quickly. It is, I answered. Because you've been adjusting the truth depending on who you're speaking to. He tried to argue, but he had no strong ground left. I reminded him that he had pushed hard to sell this house just weeks ago, saying the market was perfect and we needed a fresh start. Now I knew that fresh start meant disappearing. I remembered how excited he acted when a buyer showed interest. At the time, I thought he was motivated. Now I understood he was preparing an exit. The realization did not make me cry. It made me clear. Here's what's going to happen, I said evenly. Tomorrow you will call Betrayal. On speaker. With me in the room. And you will tell the full truth. No drama. No blaming. Just facts. He stared at me like he did not recognize the woman in front of him. Maybe he didn't. I didn't fully recognize myself either. The version of me from yesterday would have been begging, crying, asking what I did wrong. But tonight I was calm, controlled, awake. He finally asked the question he had been avoiding. Are you leaving me? I held his gaze. I haven't decided yet, I said honestly. But whether I stay or go will depend on truth, not fear. That answer unsettled him more than anger would have. He was used to emotional reactions. He was not used to strategy. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Betrayal. I don't want to fight her. I just want stability for my child. I read it out loud. Orion closed his eyes for a moment. The reality of fatherhood, responsibility, and exposure was closing in. This was no longer about romance or excitement. It was about consequences. I realized then that the real collapse of his double life would not come from yelling or revenge. It would come from structure, from alignment, from the 2 women he underestimated deciding to communicate clearly. And as I stood there in my own living room, I understood something deeply. He had spent 2 years dividing us to protect himself, but now unity was the one thing he could not control. The next morning felt unreal, like the calm before a storm that everyone knows is coming, but no one wants to name. Orion barely slept. I could hear him turning in bed, sighing, getting up for water, coming back again. I slept a little, but it was a different kind of sleep, light and sharp. When the sun came through the curtains, I was already awake. Today was the day his 2 worlds would finally meet in the same room. He stood in the kitchen holding his phone for almost 5 full minutes before dialing Betrayal. His hands were not steady. Mine were. He put the call on speaker like I asked. It rang 3 times. Then she answered. Her voice was cautious but calm. Hi. Orion swallowed before speaking. Betrayal. Callista is here. We're together. There was a short silence but not shock. She had expected this. Okay, she said quietly. I stayed silent at first. I wanted him to lead. This was his truth to explain. He started talking fast, like he wanted to finish before courage disappeared. He admitted he lied. He admitted he told Betrayal we were separated. He admitted he told me his trips were work when they were not. He admitted he talked about moving out of state. He admitted he asked about engagement rings. Saying it all out loud in one continuous line made it sound worse than screenshots ever could. There was no space to hide between different conversations now. It was one story, one timeline, one exposed lie. Betrayal asked the hardest question. Did you ever plan to tell either of us the full truth? He didn't answer right away. I watched him search for something to say that wouldn't destroy him completely. I thought I could fix it before it exploded, he said finally. That answer told us everything. Then I spoke. My voice was calm, not emotional. We're not here to attack you, I said. We're here because your decisions affect 3 lives. And a child. Betrayal agreed. I could hear the strength in her now. She was not the woman from that midnight phone call anymore. She sounded steady, focused, protective. We talked about practical things. The baby. Support. legal responsibility, living arrangements. Every topic felt heavy but necessary. Orion tried once or twice to shift the conversation back to feelings, saying he cared about both of us, saying he was overwhelmed. But this was no longer about what he felt. It was about what he did. At one point, Brielle said something that stayed with me. "You made promises like they were free," she told him. "But promises cost something." The silence after that was long. Orion had no answer. By the end of the call, nothing was solved, but everything was clear. There would be no secret move to another state. No quiet house sale without explanation. No engagement ring bought in private. The fantasy was gone. Only reality remained. When he hung up, he looked exhausted. "So what now?" he asked me. I took a deep breath. "Now you face consequences," I said. "Not drama. Not chaos. Just consequences." For the first time, he did not argue. He just nodded slowly. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. The fear I felt on the night of that phone call was gone. The uncertainty was gone. I did not know if my marriage would survive. I did not know what my future looked like yet. But I knew this. I was no longer in the dark. And once you see clearly, you can never go back to pretending. After that call, the house felt quieter than it ever had before, but it was not a peaceful quiet. It was the quiet of something ending. Orion went to sit on the couch, staring at the floor like he was trying to calculate damage the way he would calculate a business loss. I stood in the kitchen and watched him, realizing I was no longer looking at my partner. I was looking at a man facing the results of his own choices. For 2 years he believed he could balance emotion, lies, distance, and promises without collapse. Now the collapse was here, and it was simple. Truth had entered the room. "I'll do whatever you want," he said finally, his voice low. That sentence might have moved me a week ago. Now it felt empty. "That's the problem," I replied. "You've been doing whatever you want this whole time." He didn't fight that. He didn't try to defend himself. I think he finally understood that this was not about convincing me to stay. It was about whether I would respect myself if I did. I spent the rest of the day thinking quietly. Not crying. Not screaming. Thinking. I thought about our wedding. I thought about the nights I stayed home while he traveled. I thought about the way he pushed to sell the house so urgently, saying the Los Angeles market was perfect, and we needed to move forward. Now I understood he was not planning a shared future. He was preparing a transition. I felt embarrassed for not seeing it earlier, but I stopped myself. Trust is not weakness. Lying is. That afternoon, Brielle texted me privately. She said she had scheduled her first official doctor appointment for the pregnancy next week. She said she did not expect me to respond, but she wanted me to know she was choosing stability over emotion. I respected that. I replied with something simple. "You and your baby deserve honesty." I surprised myself by meaning it fully. I did not feel jealousy toward her. I felt clarity about him. When Orion came back into the kitchen later, he asked if I had made a decision. I told him I needed space to think clearly without pressure. I said I would not rush into forgiveness or divorce just to calm him. He looked scared again. Not of losing love, of losing certainty. "Are you going to tell people?" he asked carefully. That question revealed what he cared about most. Reputation. Image. Control. I held his gaze. "The truth doesn't damage a reputation," I said quietly. "Behavior does." That night, I slept in the guest room. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Just intentionally. The bed felt unfamiliar, but my mind felt steady. I realized something important as I lay there staring at the ceiling. I was not fighting for him anymore. I was deciding if he was worth fighting for at all. And deep down, I already knew something had shifted permanently. Even if I stayed, the version of me who trusted without question was gone. The version of me who accepted half-truths was gone. The woman who answered that midnight phone call in fear no longer existed. In her place stood someone calmer, sharper, watching. And Orion could feel it. The next few days were not loud or dramatic. They were quiet and heavy, like the air before rain. Orion moved carefully around the house, as if any sudden sound might break something fragile. He offered to cook. He offered to cancel upcoming trips. He offered to call a therapist. I noticed something important. Every offer was reactive. Nothing was proactive. He was responding to exposure, not changing from understanding. And that difference mattered to me. I took time off work, telling my office I needed personal days. I spent hours walking around our neighborhood in Los Angeles, looking at streets I had passed for years without really seeing them. I kept asking myself one question. If I remove fear, what do I actually want? Not what looks good. Not what feels safe. What feels true? The answer did not come immediately, but one thing became clear. I did not want to stay in a life built on management and control. Brielle and I continued texting. Slowly, carefully. There was no friendship, but there was respect. She told me she was reviewing her legal options to protect her child. She was not threatening. She was preparing. That word stayed with me. Preparing. I realized I needed to do the same. Not emotionally. Practically. One evening, I asked Orion to sit down again. He looked nervous immediately. I told him I had been thinking about the house. We are not selling it right now, I said clearly. Not until everything is legally clear and transparent. He nodded quickly. Too quickly. Of course, he said. I could see he understood what that meant. No fast exit. No quiet relocation. No escape plan hidden inside real estate paperwork. Then I asked him something different. When you imagined leaving with her, what story did you tell yourself about me? He looked surprised. He had not expected that question. He hesitated before answering. I told myself you would move on, he said slowly. That you're strong. That you'd be fine. I felt a strange calm hearing that. He reduced me to resilience so he could justify betrayal. He convinced himself I would survive, so he did not have to feel guilty. I am strong, I said. But strength doesn't excuse dishonesty. That night, something inside me settled. Not because it hurt less, but because I saw the full pattern. Orion didn't fall into an affair by accident. He created emotional backup plans. When one life felt routine, he built another. When pressure increased, he promised more. He avoided discomfort by multiplying promises instead of solving problems. And I understood then that if I stayed without real accountability, I would always wonder when he would build a third version of his life. Before going to bed, I checked my phone. Brielle had sent a simple message. Thank you for being calm through this. I didn't expect that. I stared at it for a long time. Neither of us chose this situation, but we both chose how to respond to it. As I turned off the lights, I realized the decision I had been avoiding was no longer unclear. I was not afraid of being alone. I was afraid of staying where truth had to fight to survive. The decision did not come in a dramatic moment. There was no shouting, no breaking glass, no final explosion. It came quietly, like a door closing inside my chest. 2 days after that last conversation, I asked Orion to sit down one more time. He already knew. I could see it in the way he avoided my eyes, in the way his hands stayed still on his knees like he was waiting for a verdict. I've made my decision, I said calmly. He nodded once, almost bracing himself. I'm filing for divorce. The word hung between us, solid and final. He closed his eyes for a few seconds, then opened them again. Are you sure? He asked softly. Not angry. Not defensive. Just smaller than I had ever seen him. Yes, I said. And I surprised myself by how steady my voice sounded. This isn't about punishing you. It's about protecting myself. He tried once more. He said we could rebuild. He said people survive worse. He said he would cut contact with Brielle except for the baby. But that was the point. There would always be contact. There would always be a reminder. And even without that, something more important was broken. Trust is not a glass you glue back together and pretend is new. Once you see the cracks, you always see them. I don't hate you, I told him honestly. But I can't live inside something that was managed instead of lived. That sentence ended it. The next week moved fast. I spoke to a lawyer. I gathered documents. I separated finances. Practical steps. Clean lines. Orion cooperated, maybe out of guilt, maybe out of exhaustion. Brielle sent me one last message after she heard about the divorce. I didn't want your marriage to end because of me, she wrote. I replied with the truth. It didn't end because of you. It ended because of choices. On my final night in that house as his wife, I walked through every room slowly. The kitchen where we laughed. The hallway where I took that midnight phone call. The bedroom where I watched him sleep, unaware his world was already collapsing. I did not cry. I felt something different. Release. I realized that the worst part of betrayal is not the other person. It is the version of yourself that starts questioning your own reality. And I refused to live like that. Orion helped me carry boxes to my car the next morning. Los Angeles traffic moved like always, unaware that my life had completely changed. Before I got into the driver's seat, he said, I never wanted to hurt you. I looked at him carefully. Intent doesn't erase impact, I replied. Then I got in the car and drove away. As I merged onto the freeway, I did not know exactly what my future looked like. I only knew it would be honest. And that was enough. The first night in my new apartment felt unfamiliar, but it did not feel lonely. That surprised me. I expected silence to hurt. I expected the weight of everything to crash down once I was alone. Instead, I felt something steady. Clean. I placed my suitcase near the wall, sat on the floor, and just breathed. For the first time in 2 years, nothing around me was built on a lie. Los Angeles looked different from this side of my life. The city lights outside my new window did not feel like witnesses anymore. They felt like reminders that life keeps moving, no matter how heavy your story feels. I thought about that midnight phone call again. If I had ignored it, if I had chosen comfort over truth, I would still be sleeping next to someone living a second life. That realization gave me strength. Orion and I finalized the legal steps quickly. There was no dramatic fight at the end, just paperwork and signatures. Brielle moved forward with her pregnancy, preparing for motherhood with a kind of focus I respected. We are not friends, but we share something unusual, clarity born from the same betrayal. I do not blame her. I do not compete with her. The competition was never between us. It was between truth and deception. People have asked me if I regret answering that phone call. I don't. Painful truth is still better than comfortable illusion. What hurt me was not that Orion loved someone else. What hurt was that he managed 2 realities like projects, believing he could control outcomes without consequences. But life does not work that way. Promises cost something, and eventually they collect. If you are listening to my story right now, maybe you see pieces of yourself in it. Maybe you ignored small signs because you wanted peace. Maybe you felt something was off but told yourself you were overthinking. I learned that intuition is not paranoia. It is quiet intelligence. When something feels wrong for too long, it usually is. Leaving was not easy. Divorce is not glamorous. Starting over is not simple. But staying would have cost me something greater, my self-respect. And once that goes, rebuilding anything becomes impossible. To anyone listening who feels stuck between fear and truth, I want to tell you this. Clarity may hurt at first, but confusion hurts forever. Choose clarity, even if it shakes your world. Thank you for listening to my story. Truly. If you've been here from the first moment that phone rang at 12:17 a.m., I'm grateful. If you're going through something similar, I hope this reminds you that you are stronger than you think. And if you've never faced betrayal, hold tightly to honesty in your own life. Protect it. You deserve a love that doesn't need managing. You deserve a future that isn't shared in secret. And most of all, you deserve peace that doesn't depend on ignoring the truth. Thank you for listening.